Hi guys and welcome back. Today we'll be painting and weathering the Jagdpanther, but before I start on that, there were just a couple of aftermarket parts that I wanted to put on. So the gun cleaning rod and the tow cables. So I got the gun cleaning rod from Aber aftermarket. It's for a Tiger one, but I didn't think there'd be a vast difference in some of the photos I saw online. The brackets looked pretty similar, so I was comfortable that was close enough. And the instructions were reasonably superficial. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean it was a bad thing, because the construction itself should have been reasonably simple. And look, to cut a long story short, I think they came out okay, but the folding of the brackets, clearly I didn't have the right tools and my pliers were too big and I didn't have a good straight edge and lack of experience and big fat fingers, so a lot of elements against me. But the experienced guys will probably laugh a lot. 2.5 hours to build the two brackets, and a lot of frustration and fiddling around in that time. But as I said, I think they came out all right. In the finish, I ended up filling them with a polymer clay, which you can then bake in the oven. And I'm really starting to like using that because it's not as tacky as green stuff or some of the other modelling clays. A lot cleaner to work with, and you have to be careful on where you use it. You can't stick a plastic kit in the oven and bake it, but in some instances I think it's got good application. But I'm sure you'll be very pleased to know that I managed to stick the 3 straight pieces of the gun cleaning rod together with no drama at all. And the tow cable was, as you would imagine, very straightforward, so just a matter of getting a drill the same circumference as the actual cable itself and very carefully drilling out the end of the hooks so it can fit in there, and just using some super glue to stick it in. And as I said, very straightforward, and I think in my case, as we all know, I'm dangerous putting plastic tow cables near heat. A much safer route for me to go. So then it was on with the painting, and the first time I've ever done the tritone camouflage pattern. Felt like it was going quite well, and I was using the spray brush and a little bit of overspray, but largely I was reasonably happy with everything, up until I put it on the diorama base just to test fit it, and then the brightness of the camouflage was just really stark, and it was so distinguishable compared to the photo where it's really quite difficult to see exactly what sort of pattern is on. So I ended up going back into the spray booth and doing a really light spray with Panzer Grey, just to take the brightness of the colours down, and I think that's come out quite well, and it looks really quite good in person. It almost looks like the grey is starting to come through, so maybe a base coat of the grey is starting to come through, maybe the field painting of the camo, but maybe I'm overthinking it as well. Anyway, it seems to have come up pretty well, so I did a little bit of scratching of that paint with the view that I'd pick up those bits with some rust and some dull gunmetal and the like, but because of going back over with the Panzer Grey, that's sort of all lost, so just caused me a little bit of rethinking on how I wanted it to look. You'll see a little bit later on where I do quite a little bit of dusting with pigments, and again, you'd think I'd learned, when I put that onto the base, it just didn't match up with the terrain, so I had to take all that off again, and I'll put that back on once the tank's firmly positioned in its final resting spot. So at this point, I had done as much of the base colour work as I wanted to do. I'd sprayed the tank with a gloss varnish to seal it all in, and put the decals on, which were pretty straightforward, just the numbers and what have you, and moved on to the washes. So I always use artist oils. In this case I wanted to pick up the tone of the road, so that sort of yellowy, dusty look that would have, I'm imagining, lodged itself in all the recesses of the tank, etc. So started off with burnt sienna and mineral spirits, and then just added into that some yellow ochre and some burnt umber. And I think I might have even thrown a little bit of carbon black in there just to take the highlights off it a little bit. Add quite a lot of the mineral spirits into that, so it's quite a wet wash, if there's such a thing, and then apply that pretty liberally across the tank, knowing that I'm going to take quite a bit of it off further down the track. So while that first wash is still quite wet, I like to get back in with the airbrush and just blow air through it and try and get sort of force some streaking and blow away the sort of the large areas of surplus. But it also gives that sort of nice, I guess, rain effect that it's washed the dirt down the side and starts blowing it around a little bit, which again, it's an effect that I quite like the look of. And this is now a little bit further down the track where it's pretty much mostly dry, and that's when I start to have a look at it to say, well, where does it need to come off? Initially, I used just the plain mineral spirits and put that on pretty carefully, and just look at the areas where I really don't want the wash to be, and then sort of work it into the crevices or the recesses or the like. And when I think that's sort of right, that's when I can go a little bit heavier and almost try and again get that running effect. So at this stage I'm more taking paint or taking wash off and wiping it away, and then having the brush clean and then going back in and just sort of trying to get it where I think it needs to be. It's a really subjective thing. Everyone will have a different view on how it should look. And then pretty much once it's dry, then go in with a dry cotton bud. I don't use any mineral spirits on this, and just polish off in the areas where I want to have the least amount. Now, I had a bit of a mishap here. I polished so hard I took the bottom of the first number off of the tank ID, which wasn't great thinking on my part, but a little bit of mud will no doubt fix that up. Then, as I said earlier, I went through the process of putting the pigments on, and I love using pastels as well, so I was using the dry earth and what have you. But when I positioned it on the base, it just didn't match the road surface at all, and it looked horrible. So I ended up taking all that back off. So I won't show a lot of this, and I'll do all of the pigment work once it's in situ. So with that, the tank was largely finished, but I just felt it was lacking a little bit of colour somewhere, so I thought I'd put something on the back deck. The crew have got some supplies and ready for perhaps a feast after the photo's taken, so just had some bits and pieces in my spares box. This is just a resin crate, which I think came with the US naval figure that I've had for ages, and then some bottles, beer bottles, which I scoured the internet for World War II German beer labels, and I found one. I hope it's a World War II vintage. The internet said it was, and I'm sure someone can let me know. Jens perhaps can let me know if I've completely got it wrong, but that's what I found, and it looks old. So it was a little bit fiddly, hard to film because I needed my powerful magnifying glass to actually see what I was doing. And then used a bit of the wet effects, the MIG wet effects on the bottles in particular, to give them a little bit of a sheen, but not a huge gloss. And carved the Johnny Walker bottle out of the clear sprue. And so that started to put a little bit of colour, but I thought it was still missing just something else. It just looked a little bit too structured, so I thought it needed a Hessian sack full of something. So my love affair with polymer clay continues, and I thought I'd do one from scratch. And I shaped it largely on the tank because I wanted it to fit into all the crevices and not look like a resin piece just propped on top. And with the toothbrush in particular, to give it texture, I was able to push it down, and it really looked like it was heavy, and it was sitting on the rear deck. And just painted that up. I always start really dark, and then lighten it up with effectively dry brushing, but not as dry as you might traditionally go, just to bring up some highlights. And then a little bit of a light wash. This is an acrylic wash, not a oil paint wash, and just to fill in the lowlights if you like. And then back again with a brush to pick out just the last few little highlights a little bit more delicately, although it doesn't look delicate when it's speeded up like this. And just a little bit of Panzer Grey around where the neck of the bag is, just to accentuate the rope because that was pretty thin, and give it a little bit of shade in those particular areas. and largely happy with that. Now, because I moulded it on the tank, I had the sort of registry of where it was sitting, which was what I would hope would happen. The top piece on the track mount, and a couple of rear bits on the exhaust fan. So just used a little bit of super glue there, and it eventually clicked on like a part, which I was pretty happy with that. It all worked according to plan. So that's largely it, guys. Just a quick 360 of the tank now, and reasonably happy with how it's turned out. I think it looks pretty good, and certainly now it looks much better on the Dio base. It blends in a lot more comfortably than it did before when the Tricam was really stark. So I'll just follow this off with a slideshow for about a minute, a few close-ups, and come back and say. So that's it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. The final reveal will be hopefully up very soon, within the next few days. Just really all I have to do is secure the figures in the tank permanently to the top, and then just do a little bit of dusting and pastel work, and then this one will be finished. So thank you so much for watching, and really appreciate the comments, and look forward to getting comments on this one. And if it's the first time you're watching and you like what you've seen, don't forget to subscribe so you can keep track of what's coming next. Take care, everyone. Bye.